Welcome everybody to another episode of Land of Saints and Sinners with me, your host today, Richie Taylor, and with
Clark
and
Jojo.
Well, today we're going to be discussing, as we looked at the episode last time we were on here, we talked about digital ID, but today we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about, yes, you guessed it, that warmonger, the one who went into a false war and false pretenses,
Tony Blair.
Have we found those weapons yet?
Still looking for them, still haven't found him. The guy should be in jail, in my opinion. But anyway, let me not get my opinion in straight away. But Clark, what do you think? What do you make of this digital ID that Tony Blair and the Blair Institute is pushing right now?
Just makes me wonder, why is Tony Blair so into digital ID? How much skin in the game has he got? Where is this push coming from? Who's motivating him? Where's he getting his push from? We know he's got massive ties with Europe, with the Klaus Schwab and the WEF. I think that it's a very dangerous path to go down. Digital IDs, the intrusion upon everyone. I think the way that he's presenting it, very altruistic, lots and lots of benefits. But anything that Tony Blair tells me, if he told me water was wet, I'd have to put my hand in the bucket to check.
Well, Blair was responsible for the open borders in the first place, about mass immigration in the country, so I got no trust in the guy completely, Jojo.
You've got to remember that Haig's behind it as well.
Yeah, of course, the ex-Tory leader, William Hague, as well, is pushing for this digital ID. So why do you think they're doing this? And what are they saying are the benefits? Because they're trying to sell this to the public, aren't they? Because a survey came out, and shockingly, 53% of people, I think it was a YouGov poll, stated that they were comfortable with digital ID.
I find that absolutely absurd. Again, it's all about control. It's basically everything that we have, everything that we are is going to be sort of formatted on our phones, and that is our ID to go on a plane, to have carbon, credit. It's everything's going to be on there. So we're going to be like under scrutiny no matter what, and it's nothing short of communism, really.
Well, you mentioned on the carbon footprint, because I think that's what it's going in, because we've seen in China, obviously, that social credit system they have is measured and everything else, and so I think they potentially could impose fines, Clark, if your carbon footprint is too big. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's scary because they're interfering with our everyday lives.
I think the scary thing is it's not about what they're presenting it to be now, it's what it's potentially going to be in the future. And they're not talking about carbon credits yet. I know they've got carbon credits in China, but it really will come down to, hang on a minute, you want to leave your town, you maybe want to go visit a relative, it'll be, hang on a minute, let's have a look at your phone, let's have a look at your digital ID. No, you haven't got enough carbon credits. You've used up too much carbon. You can't go and see your grandma.
So, some people watching this might just think this is so far-fetched, and I totally hear that. But Tony Blair is actually talking about how it has, excelled over in China. So if it's doing such, a great job over there, why are they not going to be bringing it over here, which they are, or they are trying to? However, my point is, that's exactly where this is going to go. If they're following suit, we're going to be there under that banner.
Well, you mentioned India and Norway as well, that they've already introduced it there as a
Singapore.
Estonia, Singapore, yeah.
What's concerning is, though, and not to be hypocritical, the fact is all three of us here have got stuff on our phones already, like wallets. We pay by using our phone.
Mm-hmm.
We've just been honest. So we're already in the system ourselves. We talked about cash last time we were here, in the last episode of Cashless Society. So we're already using it ourselves. Let's be quite frank about that. Our banking apps and everything, it seems convenient. So people are being not forced, but they feel it's so much more easier and convenient to have everything on your phone. And that is why they're using that as a means of access to get digital ID, to gather all your data, all information, everything about you, to be able to control you.
There's a difference though, isn't there? Yes, everyone's got a phone, they've got a tracking device in there, but it does make things easier. Communication's better. I think you said in one of the other ones, your son probably uses his phone or a laptop or whatever to speak to people all over the world. So we're not Luddites. We're not turning around saying against technology. What we're talking about is what they're using the information for, and that is control. And it does come down to they can track and trace absolutely everything. Your medical records are going to be on there. So there's a lot of discussion around the validity of continuing the vaccination process for COVID. I know there's a push for the spring vaccines at the moment. So will it come down to again, no, you're not allowed on the bus because you haven't got the right vaccinations. Because if it's about controlling you, it's about having everything in one place. people should be able to choose as to what information they share, and that should be sacrosanct.
I think on that, what's important to remember is the elderly. Take my mum, for example, and our parents. My mum's got a £10 phone from Asda. That's not a plug for Asda unless they want to sponsor this podcast. But she's got a £10 phone and she doesn't know how to use modern technology. So she would be absolutely and completely in the dark. And there are millions of people out there in that position.
6 million.
6 million, where they won't be able to use that kind of phone. Their phones to access all these services and everything else. And on the vaccine passport things, we've seen that. They tried to introduce that, if you remember, during the lockdown. If you've had your vaccine, you couldn't go to the cinema unless you had a vaccine passport, a QR code on your phone. So it's all been tried, it's already been done, it's already out there. But what about the people who can't access it, Giorgio?
I mean, I have not got the answers to that. I mean, I don't know actually what will happen, but they will find a way. As in, the government, I'm sure, will sort of implement something that they will have to find a way. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but there will be a lot of resistance, and there should be a lot of resistance. And I'm hoping that sort of actually exposing this for really what it is, and how frightening it is, sort of will make us who can do it not do it. I'd rather be with no phone and actually sort of on the elderly side and not doing it.
So do we revolt by just spending cash and refuse to pay by, because we're already using it. It's out, it's ready, available. Everyone's using it already.
But our hand was forced because there were some companies, and like the major companies, that wouldn't take cash. Could only pay by cards. I remember when it first came out, and I was going to restaurants with my friend Deb, and we were going in, and then it was just like we had cash, and it was like, no, you can't pay by cash now. So we were like, hang on, my hand is being forced because you're a really good restaurant that we like to come to. So do we either, sort of revolt that and then go elsewhere?
I think the thing with cash, it's the same with anything else. Use it or lose it, and that's what I'd urge people to do. Is if you can use cash, always use it, because if you don't, you will lose it.
But banks are stopping you from taking it out at the moment.
But again, talking about banks, you look back down through history. Every high street had a bank. Every small town had maybe one or two banks where you had access to cash, and then about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they started pushing and saying, use telephone banking, use internet banking. So people started going online and doing that. Where are all the banks on the high street now? You have to go into a major town to get it. And
qualify why you're taking your money out.
And the reason why is because people weren't using the banks because they didn't have to. So if you don't use the banks, just the same as if you don't use the greengrocers, the butchers, the bakers along your high street, those businesses will cease to exist, and therefore you are then forced to going into the supermarket, because the high street only reflects where people are spending the money.
With your digital ID, which then makes you in the system.
It is a very dangerous and frightful thing, a slippery road that we're going down with this whole idea of, digital ID, because it exposes every single person to be controlled by an institute, a government. These people, who are these people? Who's behind it all? Now, we've talked on previous episodes about WEF and the WHO and the UN and all those kinds of things. We don't go over old ground, but what is the purpose? Now, this is what we didn't get to on the last episode, Giorgio. We didn't get to what is the reasoning behind it? Now, is it depopulation? Just a question. What is it? Just control for the sake of it? What are the reasons for it?
No, go on.
The WEF have been very, very clear for many, many years as to what their ideal is. Klaus Schwab, I think back in the 70s, wrote his first book that talked about stakeholder capitalism. And stakeholder capitalism effectively means that there's large corporations will take the role of the state. So we will hand over control to them. They will provide us with our food. They'll provide us with everything that we need. And therefore, we won't have any representation democratically wise, because it's a one world government. That is the ultimate goal. It's a one world government, and that's just so wrong.
But it's also, don't forget, like Tony Blair admitted, that actually AI is going to be streamlining decisions. So I think it's an integration of AI as well, which is another pretty big worry for me, because, how is AI streamlining decisions of like, I think it was talking about the live body cams will be like literally going live to a command center, and actually the AI will be streamlining decisions, and with, again, it's sort of facial recognition. It's everything, which, I know this is just like the digital ID, but it's everything, isn't it?
Well, talking about the AI thing, it's interesting because Farage was very friendly with Trump, as we know, and Trump's very friendly with Musk. Musk himself is pushing much further for this kind of idea of ID, because they don't have a voter ID in America, and using AI. So there's a kind of a conflict there with Farage's position, which is simply, look, this is a dangerous road we're going down. We shouldn't be, putting all our information out to the government in this way. We should have some protection from, as you said, the corporations and all that kind of stuff. But so I wonder what kind of the thoughts are around AI involved in this, because there's no human interaction. So whatever AI is generated with algorithms that will be sourced from all kinds of pools and avenues. And that could be actually, you've got hackers, you've got people who can hack into that, and they can create all kinds of things. So facial recognition is one. We discussed it last night, Clark, how there's mistakes being made in London.
I think when they were doing trials, there was trials done outside King's Cross Station, and there was 96% false positives when they were running it. So there were glitches in the system. And the problem with I think from the data that they were doing, those false positives were predominantly with people who were from the ethnic minorities. They were from the Afro-Caribbean community, that they were getting their faces wrong and targeted and saying that they were criminals when they were quite freely going about their place, law-abiding citizens. And that's where the problem comes in. There's a reliance upon technology, but and they're saying now that the technology learns from itself, and there has to be some human oversight at some point, because the technology isn't always right. It's only as good as how it's been programmed.
Don't forget there's twins and doppelgangers, so how are we going to know, the right decision being made?
I find it ironic because the person pushing this, he says, Tony Blair tells us that it will increase trust.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to trust you and your mate Alistair Campbell? Are you mad? Are you crazy? I don't even have to start preaching down there now. So anyway, but let's get back to the subject, shall we? So trust on the trust issue. I mean, would you genuinely trust the government with all of your data and all of your information? Access. I mean, they're talking about access to people's bank accounts now, aren't they? Because especially if those who are on benefits, potentially, how they're spending, what they're spending it on. Like they mentioned that as well. Because of fraudulent cases. But surely, the cash under the mattress is always the best approach. I'm old-fashioned, me. I like, put a bit of cash under the mattress. I'm not telling you my address, by the way, just in case you pay me a visit.
I don't think all those piles of 5p's and 2p coins are really worth it.
I've only got a single bed. But getting back to this, it is quite worrying. And I think people out there must be concerned. For you watching the episode today, we'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts as well. So as we're discussing this, please just send in your comments, any things that you think the reasons why the government seem to be pushing this, or certainly Tony Blair. And of course, Keir Starmer is quite favourable towards this as well. He seems to be moving towards that kind of thing, because the EU he's closely aligning himself to the EU again, which they're looking at that as well, Clark, aren't they?
Yeah, it is part of that whole push towards single global government, the belief that having one unitary authority to control Europe and then potentially the world is going to make things a lot easier for decision making and streamlining decisions. The assumption on these things as well, though, with digital ID is, people. The argument back will always be, well, if you're doing nothing wrong, you've got nothing to hide. What are you worried about? Well, we haven't got anything to hide, so why do you want to look? Trust us. Do you know what? I'm on PAYE. Everything that I earn is declared. You're getting my taxes. Sure I'm absolutely positive.
No backhanders, like?
No, definitely no backhanders in my game. I'm a good, honest boy.
I know you are.
Yeah. So, but the whole thing should be from a standpoint of, do you know what? You're innocent until proven guilty, and unless there's some suspicion about you, then obviously have an investigation. But I'm doing nothing wrong. The vast majority of the public are doing nothing wrong. So this is trying to use a very, 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 very small percentages of people that are doing something wrong to put controls on everyone else. And it's the minority that they're going for, but it's the majority. It's the expense of.
But with the immigrants coming in and actually all being on the welfare system, that is the increase there, and they're actually giving lots of money to everybody, and then there are people that have lived here for years that are not able to get on benefits. How does that work?
Who've actually paid their taxes.
Yeah.
We talk about the elderly, they're paying for the next generation, really, because
absolutely.
they've gone around bankrupt in the pension, and sent off all our gold.
Sold off all the gold,
I mean, and we're still paying for that. I mean, if you go back to Blair, which is what we've been discussing
And Hague.
And William Hague in particular as well. But, when he opened up for immigration purposes, he opened up the borders because it was cheap labour. Bring cheap labour into our country, so productivity will be higher. But the problem is it put a strain on all of our services. And that's continued by consecutive governments right up until this current Labour government. And no one's able to stop it. So I don't see how, when Blair mentions in this video we're about to watch about the difference that digital ID will make, we'll come back and let you know our thoughts. Watch this and be right back.
Digital ID will make our interactions with each other and with the state faster, cheaper, and more reliable. It will allow us to judge who has a right to be in our country and who doesn't, and so solves one of the major challenges of immigration. Facial recognition can now spot suspects in real time from live video, tracking organized criminals at borders, in public spaces, even helping find missing people. In London, live facial recognition led to 360 arrests by the Met Police between January and October 2024, just in a pilot project. It boosts response times and helps identify suspects quickly in busy places like train stations and events. Live video from body cams and CCTVs can be used to provide real-time advice to officers from a command center or deploy resources to where they're most needed. AI will go even further, spotting crime patterns, guiding patrols, and streamlining decisions. Police forces are also ditching outdated systems for cloud-based platforms, giving officers real-time access to data and to smarter tools. This means they can get fingerprint matches from a crime scene in minutes, not days, simply by taking a photo with their smartphone. So we cannot continue with business as usual, and change is inevitable. This is where technology, like digital ID, becomes critical. My institute's own analysis shows that introducing this in the UK would save at least $2 billion a year, and likely more, by reducing losses to fraud, improving tax collection, and better targeting of state support. We know this because around the world, countries like Estonia, Singapore, even India, have successfully implemented digital ID systems, cutting red tape and improving efficiency. These nations aren't just adopting new technology, they are reimagining how the state itself works. Of course, concerns about privacy and security are valid, but these systems, done in the right way, actually give individuals more control over their own data. With robust safeguards and transparency, we can ensure that digital ID enhances rather than threatens personal privacy. The key is building trust and designing, with thought and intention, systems that are secure, fair, inclusive, and effective at combating crime and making us all safer. The alternative, managing an ineffective status quo, will let down the public. Britain has the capability to lead in this digital revolution. We have world-class universities, leading AI research, and a thriving tech sector. If we can seize this opportunity, we can build a government that is smarter, leaner, and more responsive to people's needs. And now is the time to embrace it.
Welcome back. Well, I wonder what you made of Tony Blair's comments there on digital ID and the benefits of it. He mentioned that it will help to cut immigration, illegal or otherwise, into this country. I wonder what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Clark, what do you think about it on immigration?
I find it really a hard stretch to imagine how it's going to help immigration. There's a lot of undocumented people out here now that are walking along the streets. Now, if they find those people, what are they going to do? Like, if there's 1 million undocumented migrants currently in the system or in our country, what happens when they catch them? The facial recognition catches someone, or they do a raid on a business and they say, right, let's see your digital ID. You haven't got any. You overstayed your visa. What? They're going to put them in a camp. Where are they going to deport them? How much is that going to cost? And how does it actually stop the people coming in? How does it stop the small boats? How does it stop those small boats leaving the shores of France and ending up on our beaches?
Well, I'm a great believer in mass deportation. I like Trump's approach to it. Just send them all back where they came from. I mean, it sounds racist, but it's not.
But how do you know where they come from?
If they're here illegally, but if they are here illegally, they should, on mass deportation, they shouldn't be here.
Yeah, no, they shouldn't. They should not be here. And again, we need to do something. But if someone lands undocumented, no passport, how do we prove that that's where they come from?
Yeah. The other thing as well, Tony Blair mentioned in that clip that you just saw, Jojo, was the vaccination status.
Yeah.
And that's quite worrying, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, because, there are a percentage of people, and a major percentage actually, of people that haven't had all 3 vaccines and the boosters. I haven't had any. I was advised by my doctor that I was not allowed to have a vaccine because it would kill me. So, with my health conditions, I just don't think it was appropriate for me to have it. And that was my choice. I chose not to do it. So, are my social credits going to go down? Is what's going to happen to me for not wanting to have the vaccine? What's going to happen to you guys for not wanting to have the vaccine? It's like, it's our choice, and they are taking our choice away from us by enforcing us to be, privy in this.
We're all parents. If we have children, or our children have children, grandchildren, and they decide that they don't want their child to be vaccinated at birth? Because I think, what was it now? Something like 100 odd vaccines, isn't it? From the age of birth to 5 years age. There's a phenomenal amount of vaccines. Huge amount of vaccines. What if you choose that you don't want your child to have any of those vaccines? Does that mean that child is going to be treated for the whole of its life as some lower class citizen?
Exactly. So my granddaughter, she had a vaccine, and I'd advised it's probably best that she doesn't have any vaccines because of her health condition. She had one, and she was covered from head to toe in bruises. So then we had to take her to the hospital, and the bruises were so acute, and they had to do a series of blood tests, and she was only 18 months. And it transpired that the actual vaccine itself had actually damaged her blood work, and her platelets went down to 3. She nearly died. It was the most horrific time, and I had to take her to hospital, and I had to sit there with all of these bruises. And again, you know what happens, don't you? If you take a child in with bruises, I'm going to be the one looked at and pointed at, like, what are you doing? And then they had to put a chaperone at the end of the bed to ensure that I wasn't hurting my granddaughter. And then when they did the bloods, they were gobsmacked, and then she was rushed in. Her blood works were so bad. This was from a vaccine, and it is admitted within the paperwork that this can be a rare reaction from a vaccine.
Yeah, and potentially as well, who benefits from vaccines? It's the big pharmaceutical companies, people like Bill Gates, who's continually pushing for vaccines in all kinds of areas. Even in the farming industry now, we're seeing with animals, with all the kind of additives they want to push into.
The Blair.
Blair, for example, which we're going to cover in another episode, by the way, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. In fact, hit the subscribe button while you're watching this. We'd love you to subscribe, so you don't miss a single episode. It's on X as well, on TikTok as well. It's a bit more fun on TikTok. You'd enjoy it. I thought I'd get that in, guys. The vaccines are a big thing there because, I've not had a vaccine, and I was anti-vax actually. I just didn't believe in it. I never had COVID. People around me caught it. I never. They were in bed for a couple of weeks. Obviously, a lot of people, as you know, at the time were dying, of course. But I noted that the numbers, we mentioned this last episode, Giorgio, were exploding on our television screens. So many thousands of people have died this week. But actually, those people didn't die of COVID. They died with COVID.
Can I just say one thing, though? Back in the day of COVID, there were all these adverts, and there were also like the news reports and like the flashing. There were actors that I've seen acting, and then I found the actors that were acting to pretend to be dying, and it was this scaremongering, and it was just this kind of ridiculous. You sat there just going, I've seen that guy before. He's an actor, and I just found
it. Is that the guy that was in hospital bed and they filmed it?
Yeah.
He got slated on social media.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So, it was like building up this like fear mongering for us all to be like totally afraid. And ultimately, the numbers were rigged.
Even Piers Morgan, who I remember, he was quite critical. He called us people like, conspiracy theorists, and, we were killing grannies and all that because we didn't accept the fact that the vaccine and vaccine passports was the right way to go at the time. He hated us. He's actually turned around on that now, and he said, I made a mistake. So he's even corrected himself. And, we've had the 5-year inquiry that's just come up recently, just gone now. But I think there's going to be some films and documentaries coming up very soon on this to show the damage that it caused the country. Not only mentally for a lot of young people and physically for the elderly and everything else, but I think more importantly for our economy, because we spent, was it £400 billion on covering people's wages. We are still now paying, forget the £22 billion black hole, we are still now paying for that decision. It seemed right at the time and honourable for that to be done by the Treasury, but it's still having an impact now on our economy plan.
If you look at inflation figures and you look at since COVID to now, the actual increase in prices is over 20%. So when they report that like inflation as being 2.2%, they're measuring it over a 12-month period. If you actually look at the price of goods from when the COVID and the lockdown came in, and you look at it today, you're looking at over a 20% inflation in prices. A lot of that is down to energy. And again, we'll probably do a lot more on energy than everything else. But those energy prices do have a knock-on effect on the price of goods. And I think this is one of the major challenges that we've got as a society. And it is that all of these things, all these decisions that the government are making are interlinked, and they have a knock-on effect.
Absolutely.
And it really worries me that they're making decisions in one area that have massive repercussions in another, and they're not being fully considered. And I do not have the trust and the faith in the government, the civil service, and the quangos and all those departments that are out there that are being funded as well. They're taking a huge amount of money away from us. Like the National Health Service. Again, the amount of money that was spent on vaccine passports and data, like, sending out alerts and things like that. There's people out there made millions and millions and millions of pounds on technology that didn't even work. Providing masks that were ineffective.
Yeah, totally ineffective.
Talking about those alerts, did you get one of those weather ones a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
On your phone?
I've turned them off.
You can turn them off on your phone.
You can actually turn them off.
I mean, the thing is, the big question is, what do we do about it, right? And we're still kind of walking around the bushes here a little bit, aren't we? I mean, do we boycott the whole thing on digital ID by saying, no, I will not use my phone to pay for things. I won't use my phone, I'll use my passport. I'll use cash and I refuse to use anything else. We all have to do, it has to be a collective effort. In a community of people to say, no, we're keeping things as they are and refusing to allow the government to dictate to us what we should do and when we should do it. How do we do that?
It is really hard. Just get an old Nokia phone. Get an old Nokia phone so you can keep communication and just use cash.
I'm a big believer in the 80-20 principle, right? And I have friends that are teachers, and they always say that if more than 20% of the class is disruptive, do you know what? You have a really bad class. It's really difficult to teach those kids. And I think it goes well with society as well. If 20% of people aren't complying, more than 20% of people aren't complying, then it becomes a bit more of a problem to manage. And I think we have to start small. I think there's probably more than 20% of the society out there that are very similar to us in terms of, yes, there's some benefits and some ease of access, using your phones to pay for goods and what have you. But whenever necessary, whenever you can, to use cash. And I think that's the bit, is that if we can get more people using cash when they can, and using local businesses, local traders, go visit your farm shop, go visit the independent retailer, keep that person alive. That person needs that business needs your money more than one of the global corporations.
And I think as well, because we're in a Western democracy here, well, kind of, it's important to speak to your local MP and put your views forward to them, because of course, I believe a lot of these issues should go through Parliament. They should be voted. I'm a great believer in referendums. I think when there's huge societal changes, not just constitutional changes, but when things are going to change society for good or for bad, it should go back to the people. That's democracy. Do you want digital ID? Now, given YouGov's latest poll, and it was actually, funnily enough, I think it was between the 40s and 50-year-olds who were in favour of digital ID for convenience sake.
Yeah, of course.
There was 13% who just didn't care. I mean,
how do you not care? How do you not care?
It's just weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'd love to know your thoughts on it. So make sure you subscribe, of course, and leave some comments and any questions you may have. And remember, get yourself a Nokia £10 phone. Supplied by all kinds of shops, not just Asda. And make sure you spend cash when possible and support your local businesses, whether it be your butchers, your farmers, whatever it might be. And we'll see you on another episode here on the Land of Saints of Sinners. I've been your Sister Taylor. Thank you for joining me,
Clark.
And the wonderful
Jojo.
Bye for now.
Bye.
God bless.